Hey guys, it's me again, and I'm a tad bit upset again about somebody who's trying to create six logical reasons to become a Christian and not be an atheist. And I'd like to respond to those because none of them, not one of them, makes any sort of connecting sense. First point the guy makes, lack of evidence is not evidence of absence. The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence, as was said in the Boondocks. So, um, maybe not the most reliable source of a quote. Because there's no proof that God exists, that does not. No, because there is no proof that God does exist, that is not proof that God doesn't exist, which is true. It is also not proof that God does exist. You cannot go by what is written by a book that was written let me see, 6,000 years ago in Hebrew and then translated 20 times and eventually got to English in about 7,000 different forms. So I would suggest not going by the word of that book, especially the New Testament, which has been so warped and molded that people actually think that it's all about Jesus. It's not. It is the story of Moses. The Torah was written as the story of Moses. It is Moses' story. It was the story of Israel also. But it's known as Exodus is known as the story of Moses, and the book is the story of Israel. Anybody who thinks that the entire Bible is about Jesus is wrong and probably hasn't read all of it. They probably read the part about Jesus, the part that matters to Christians, the part that nobody actually reads. Well, the part that no Christian actually reads is that it's not about Jesus. Jesus was a guy who lived and died fighting the good fight for a peaceful world like Gandhi. But Gandhi isn't a big religious figure. He's just Gandhi. He was just Gandhi. Now he's dead Gandhi. He's just a body in the ground. He's not in heaven. He's not in hell. I'm dragging off. But you can't say that God does exist because we can't prove that he doesn't exist. Just like we can't say that he doesn't exist because we can't prove that he does. Also, this other point that he made in the same point, time, space, and matter are finite. If anything, that is proof that God doesn't exist, or proof towards the idea that God doesn't exist. But it's also not true. Matter within a single universe is finite. Time within a single universe, we have no way of measuring that. We can say that we measure time with a watch or a clock. We're not measuring time. We are measuring relative time. Time, if you want to listen to the British guys, time is a big ball of wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff. Now that's a very childish way of putting it, and it's David Tennant's way, but it's a very interesting thing to think about because it's not linear. It's not cause to effect. I mean, that might have been supposed to be a joke in the TV show, but that's really how things work. That's really how time works. It's not the fourth dimension is not the first dimension. You cannot compare the two. Well, you can compare them, just not without having a whole bunch of flaws. And then space. Space is finite within a singular universe. When you get into the multiverse, or the different possibilities of a single universe, then you start getting into infinite space. So don't even get me started because this goes into string theory, and I doubt the guy who made the video I'm responding to even knows half of what I'm saying, and it's probably just going, ah ha ha, this guy's stupid and atheist, which is true. Well, I'm not stupid. Well, I might be stupid by comparison to God. Second point he makes. There's a whole big. He made this point that there's a whole big group of people who tried to mathematically prove or mathematically observe evolution, and they were all atheists, and saying that in the time period of 5 billion years is how long the Earth has been around. It's actually 4.8 billion, and life has been around for 4 billion years. There's no way that that could have happened, and it's like, I want to see these guys' research, because everywhere else I look, people say that planets like Earth exist all over the place. In fact, the universe is in the business of creating life. It's just what the universe does. I really want to see this research, and I doubt they were all atheists. I really doubt it, especially if it was before 2000. No, before 1980, I'll say. But I really doubt that they were all atheists and they all came to this conclusion that it's almost mathematically impossible for this to happen, because on Earth, in the early Earth, I'm fairly certain that the chances of lifelike existence, no, lifelike circumstances coming into existence was actually had a probability factor of like 0.993. Double check me on that if people really know about this stuff. That was just in three textbooks, three different textbooks, all written in Tennessee, by the way, one of the most religious states in the United States. So that means that they were monitored. Now, a probability factor of almost 1, that's almost 100%. That's 99.3%. That's not 0.993%. That's 99.3% chance of happening on Earth, in early Earth, with the gases that we think were present. Also, the guy who... Oh, no, that's evolution, not abiogenesis. Never mind. Third point he makes. Atheists falsely compare God to mystical beings. We wouldn't have to use these cheesy analogies if it were obvious that God doesn't exist. Well, it's not obvious, because 85% of America has been brainwashed to think that some form of God exists. 61% of Britain believes this, 0% of Russia, well, almost 0. There are a lot of comedic reasons why, but it's really because of the Soviet Russia got rid of religion. If you were religious, you were killed, which I think is a bit harsh, but religion is blinding. It gets in the way of logic in a lot of situations. I'm not against religion, just religion, use religion wisely. Don't overdo your religion. It's true. Religion is the opiate of the masses. What happens if you take too many opiates? You die. You die from overdose of opiates. That's just how opiates work. Don't do religion, kids, unless you do it carefully. Don't overdose on painkillers. Don't overdose on sleeping medicine. Don't overdose on religion. Now, back to this. We falsely compare God to mythical beings like fairies and flying spaghetti monsters. That's because they're just about as easily proven. People used to believe that fairies and unicorns and dragons really existed. Now, we have decent scientific evidence that we can say it is very unlikely that these things exist or ever did exist. And we can say the same thing about God. There is no evidence proving that he does exist. That doesn't mean that we can say for absolute certain that he doesn't exist. We do have good evidence and logical foundation to say that he probably doesn't exist. And I'm fairly certain that it is a he, because no woman would ever cause miscarriages and command people to throw their babies into crocodile-infested rivers. Only a really jerky man would do that, probably in his adolescent ages when he just wants to see violence, like he's playing The Sims or something. Maybe that's what God is doing if he does exist. Just playing The Sims with us, making us fuck up for no reason. Sorry, excuse me for my language. It wasn't that bad, but whatever. So there's just as much chance that a mystical flying spaghetti monster exists as God, because God, there's no proof that he exists. There's also no proof that a magical flying spaghetti monster exists, or dragons, or fairies, or the Loch Ness Monster, or Bigfoot. Sure, there are those footprints. So there's actually more evidence for Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster than there is for God. You can't say that there is evidence for God because it's written in a book. That was translated, like I said, in 7,000 ways. The greatest lawyer of all time, you said his name, but it was muffled. I couldn't tell what you were saying. He applied the resurrection in a court of law. And he said that there was overwhelming evidence and acceptance to the point of it being proof. I want to see that court case. I want to see what went on in there. And was this guy being paid $1 million an hour to do this, to make this court argument? Even if it was just $100 an hour. If you paid him his normal lawyer fee, whatever you call it, to argue this point, he would find evidence. He would look around and try to find evidence. And he would say anything to make his point clear. Let me just point this out. Any lawyer will say anything that their client wants them to in order to let their client win the case. A lawyer is not, I repeat, a lawyer is not supposed to tell the truth. They are supposed to win. That is how lawyers work. So you cannot use a lawyer's claims when he's not behind the stand, when he has not sworn on the Bible, ironically, to tell the truth. Okay, sorry. Got a little carried away then. Between the fourth and fifth points, he makes a point about living the way you want to in heaven if you're Christian. You cannot live the way you want to in heaven. There's no way God would let you start breaking his rules just because you didn't do that while you were alive. I mean, if I made rules like God and I was trying to enforce them, if you committed adultery once you got to heaven, you're going to hell. And if you're good when you're in hell, come right back up. And of course, why would I do that to people? Why wouldn't I just, let them go? Let them disperse. Do whatever they want to do in the endless universe, in their intangible death bodies that don't exist. There's no proof that people do anything once they're dead except for switch off like a light. Once you turn a light on and off enough times, it will burn out. And what happens to that light? Does it go to heaven? No. And a light is the same concept as a human brain, which is where the soul resides. The soul is just electrical pulses bumping around in our brains that trigger hormones and pheromones and all that stuff, make you love an electrical pulse, hate electrical pulse, the urge to commit adultery, and it's an electrical pulse. Even if it's not an urge, even if you just feel like, oh, I hate my wife, gonna go do this lady, that's an electrical pulse in your brain. That's how light bulbs work. Light bulbs are electrical pulses, and when they go out, they go out. Those electrical pulses don't go to heaven. Just like our brains, the electrical pulses in our brains don't go to heaven. You cannot act however you want in heaven, anyway, because you start breaking the rules once you've already committed to following the rules. What was the point of following the rules? Fifth point, atheism has no morals. Christianity is the best source of moral compass. Atheism is not a religion. It cannot tell you what to do. Your own human mind tells you what to do. You have empathy. Most animals on the planet have empathy. They know what it feels like to be hurt. Humans know what it feels like to be stolen from, or they think they might know what it feels like. So they don't do that. The reason I don't go around stabbing people isn't because isn't because religion tells me not to. It's because I don't want people to stab me, so I'm not going to stab them. It's empathy. It's not religion. I don't need people to tell me not to murder. I don't need people to tell me not to do this and that. And also, Christianity is the best source of moral compass. What? Christianity is the #1 source of war. I mean, the Crusades. There were like 15 of them. All of them were wars caused because one guy was Christian, and the other wasn't. I mean, and they're Christian suicide bombers. The KKK was a Christian organization. Christianity is not the source of morals. It is just an illusion of a source of morals. Just because it's written down means that you need to follow it. Before Christianity came along, there was a law that you shouldn't eat pork. And if you do, you can be stoned to death or buried up to your neck and then drowned. That was how Jews used to do that. They don't anymore. But because it's immoral. We know it's immoral. We pick and choose the rules we follow because we have a sense of morality. The sixth point, the 4 questions, which aren't questions, they're words. Origin, meaning, morality, destiny. Things that don't answer these are incomplete worldviews. Christianity also answers all of them with ease because Christianity answers them stupidly. Just some guys wrote it down after thinking of it off the top of their heads. Origin? 7 days, okay, now we're here, now God rests. How does that make any more sense than evolution, with evolution having all this evidence behind it? Christianity says, oh, now we're here. Okay. Anything else? I'm almost out of time. Meaning of life. There is no meaning of life. Just reproduce. Morality? It's up here. Destiny. Nothing happens after death.